All right, so let's talk about how you can work on this, okay? The first step is to take the racket out of your hand because the racket really confuses us. So I want you to understand first what happens with the hand. So the first drill for you is to set up for your forehand, okay, neutral stance, and understand the hitting arm structure without the racket, okay? Arm is slightly bent, the wrist is laid back like this here at contact, okay? And you can now see my palm here is vertical, my palm is pointing to the target, okay? And that's what we want. So now, if I move the racket back a little bit here, and then move forward by turning the body, you can see that this is very efficient and it's easy to get the racket face vertical at contact, okay? If I do something like this, okay, now the palm is pointing up, I've turned my forearm here, now I'm in big trouble, okay? Because now I need to adjust like this and then I need to come back here. So the first drill really is to isolate the arm action here and just practice this, okay? This is what the forehand is all about. Have the right hitting arm structure, bent arm, laid back wrist, palm is pointing to the target, and now I'm moving a little bit the upper body and the racket is moving back and forth, and this is what's happening around contact, okay? So practice this a little bit and get the idea for that, okay? Very, very good drill to understand racket face control. Now, in the next step, okay, we make the motion a little bit bigger, so we add a little bit of a loop, okay? So I add a little bit of a loop. But as you can see here, my arm is not doing anything inefficient. My arm is not going like this, arm is not going like this, okay? There are some players that do things like this, okay? But it requires more coordinative talent. I think Roddick did something like this. Requires more coordinative talent to get the racket vertical at contact. You don't want that, okay? You want it to be as easy as possible for you to get the racket face vertical. So we're adding a bit of a loop. Again, we have to get under the ball, and now we go like this, and we add the body a little bit, okay? But the important part first for racket face control and consistent shots is to isolate the arm action, okay? And get this right. So right here, and then we add this, and we practice this, okay? And as you can see, it's a very short, compact motion. My body is moving, and the arm is in that stable hitting arm structure just along for the ride. So now we add the racket. Okay, so take the grip that you have on your forehand, add the racket, and now we start to, again, just simulate this part here, okay, and think about racket face control. You want the racket face vertical at contact. What's happening here before contact, okay? Is there anything inefficient going on with what you're doing, or is it just the way it should be so that it can easily get vertical at contact, okay? So again, we practice this. Move the body a little bit. This is what should happen around contact, okay? Laid back wrist, bent elbow, and then we practice this. We get a feel for this racket face control. Now we add a little bit of the loop, okay? And this is the same thing we just did without the racket, okay? And you can always go back to doing it without the racket to see, because the racket often confuses us. So when you go back to doing it without the racket, what your arm is doing, because your arm is controlling the racket, okay? Your body is making the racket move. So once you have the racket in your hand, you often get a little bit confused. If you take the racket out of your hand, you can make it clearer what you should be doing here with your arm. Okay, so we add the racket, and then we practice this motion here a little bit. We add the body, we add a little bit of down and up, and then we practice this over and over, okay, with a stable hitting arm structure. All right, so now let's start taking some balls, start hitting some balls to work on your technical efficiency and ground strokes consistency. Now, first let me just demonstrate one more time. Now we have the ball here, it remains the same concept, okay? Hitting arm structure, bent arm, laid back wrist, and then we move to contact so that the hand is vertical at contact against the ball here. And on the way there, right here, there should be no unnecessary movements that we need to adjust. What I often see is, players opening the racket face, and then at the last second they have to adjust here the arm position to get it vertical, and that's just not going to work. You're not going to have consistent shots, okay? So you can practice this a little bit against the ball right here, but now let's take the racket. What's easier to practice racket face control first is to take a shorter grip, okay? That can make it a lot easier, so we're going to take a shorter grip here. And I'm just going to hit we're isolating the arm action, and this is not the entire swing, okay? We're isolating the most important part here where you contact the ball and just before, and we want to get that right because that's what consistency is all about, okay? So I'll start hitting, okay? I have, right now I'm hitting here with an Eastern grip, but you take whatever grip you have. You can have a bit more of a Western grip too, okay? So shorter grip now, about half grip right here. I drop the ball, and I hit just like this, okay? You see it's a very short motion, but that's the basis here for consistent shots, okay? When you look at Chris Evert's forehand, for example, you'll see that it looks very much like this, okay? It's just a racket back with a very simple movement like this, and then forward, and the hitting arm structure is like this. And what you'll notice is it's very easy to hit the ball clean like this, okay? And we do that, okay, until that feels good, and now we make the swing just a little bit bigger. Now the point I also want to make is the kind of forehand that Chris Evert hits, for example, that's really the basis, okay, for a good forehand. That's what you would teach a beginner, and then you would add some of the more modern elements that the pros are using these days, but you add them later, okay? So some of you may have heard about my late hitting concept from Total Forehand Domination, where we do things like this here. That's an advanced concept that we add later once the fundamentals are in place, once racket face control is good, okay? So now we can continue with that shorter grip, and we make a bit of a loop, okay? But again, now we need to make sure we don't add any inefficiencies. So we don't open up the racket face, we don't go like this, okay? On the forehand, as I mentioned before, if you have a bit more of an extreme grip, the racket face on the way down is often a little bit closed, but then it will automatically be vertical here at contact, okay? So that's not a problem, that depends on your grip. If you have an Eastern grip, the racket face is going to be more on edge like this usually. If you have more of a bit more of a Western grip, it's going to be slightly closed here on the way down, okay? But that's all right. So adding a little bit of a loop now, okay? We're just making the swing a little bit bigger step by step. So we're adding a little bit of a loop, and now I can hit the ball a little bit harder, and I still can hit it consistently, okay? So adding a bit of a loop, and again, adding a bit of a loop, and then you do that until that feels comfortable. Okay, so now I take the full grip, so I move the hand back here, okay? And I have the loop now. It's still a very short, compact motion, but I'm using my body. I have the loop. What you'll notice is now the chances of doing something inefficient, if that's what if you're used to doing this, then possibly now that comes back into the equation, and you want to be very aware of that, and you want to try to fix that, okay? So now, again, a bit of a loop here, stable hitting arm structure. And as you can see, there's not much that can go wrong, okay, if I have this down. And you can just hit over and over. Of course, I have a lot of racket face control because I've played tennis my entire life. You may not have that much racket face control, but you're optimizing here to make it as efficient as possible, to make it as easy as possible for you to contact cleanly, and that will make your ground strokes consistent. All right, so now I've moved to the baseline. You saw that I was up close to the net. And that's because we want to make it as easy as possible to learn racket face control, to do this all-important phase around contact correctly, okay? Then you can move back step by step. I'm not showing all of the steps now. You can just simply move back from the service line step by step, maybe 1 meter at a time until you're at the baseline, okay? And at the baseline, of course, to get the ball to go deep, you need to hit a little bit harder, okay? So we need to swing more, and then it's more likely that we mess things up in terms of racket face control, okay? Our old habits are much more likely to come back. That's why we need to work with these progressions to come back here. And if you feel like you're not consistently hitting the ball clean again, and then your shot is not consistent, then stay where you are or go back towards the net again and make the swing shorter, maybe go back to taking the loop out, okay, whatever is necessary to work on, to get the clean contact and then to get the shot to be consistent, okay? So now let me demonstrate here from the baseline. We have a bit of a loop, we're using our legs, okay, so like this, but still you can see it's a very, very efficient stroke. Nothing can go wrong really at this point, okay? Of course, when the ball comes bouncing high, low, and all kinds of different balls, things can go wrong again. But right here, there's really not much that can go wrong. Okay, and again, and the racket face is very much in the same position the entire time. Okay, so it's like this. My forearm and my upper arm are not changing their positions. It's just a movement here with a loop, and the positions are not changing, and then automatically the racket face is vertical at contact. Okay, so go through these progressions, and then after that you try to incorporate that when you're rallying, when you're hitting, and as usual when you're doing progressions you want to take it slowly, step by step. Okay, so don't go out playing points right away after doing this.